Hello, Mermaid. So I want to discuss a news article I read about some research that has been done on using uh, live candles and what that do to the environment. Now, I don't know if this article is something that you can find in English or if it is a Norwegian one, but um, it does sort of make sense that especially around this time of year where there's a lot of candles being used that do pollute quite a bit. And I wanted to make a video about the morality then of using candles for a pagan, since we do tend to like to look out for the environment. Now, I might have a bit too practical an opinion about these things, and that is that you can't avoid polluting some. Yes, there are some people that do this zero footprint thing, but really all you can do is try to be conscious of what you do that harm the environment and do as little of it as possible. However, as somebody who practices witchcraft and do paganism, I would say that I probably use more candles than your average person. Now, in this article, they recommended that people switch from live candles to electric candles. And one question can then be, would that work for witchcraft? And I'm a bit torn on that issue. First of all, for me, all magical tools are there to be, just that, tools. They're a way to get me into the state of mind that I need to have to be able to practice magic effectively. And even the fairly good quality electrical candles doesn't really give that same feeling. The cheap ones doesn't at all. They are just basically some flashing lights in a piece of plastic, but you have some that's more realistic, that of course costs more, but I don't do the same thing. They don't do it for me the same way. However, at the same time, they do something. They do create the mood a little bit. So I had considered, even before I read this article, to get a couple of electrical candles for where I am in situations where I just can't use a live candle. For example, some months ago when I got stuck in a hotel because my train stopped working, so I had to spend the night at an hotel before I could get anywhere. Anyway, and I wanted to do my morning ritual work, and of course I couldn't light a candle inside my hotel room, so I had to wait with my morning work until I got home. Then I thought that it would have been practical to just have a couple of those electrical candles with me and just use them. It wouldn't be as good, but it would be better than nothing. And I think that if one benefit that you can have with using electrical candles is that even more so than a spell candle that you use again and again and again, since they will last longer, you will get, as you work magic with it, you will build energy into that electrical candle with each use, especially if you use it just for magic. So yeah, you can definitely use it, but is that something I think that would work for me to replace all my ritual work with? No, but at the same time, it is something I will have to read into to see just how damaging to the environment using live candles is. Another thing, of course, that article mentioned was that it can be somewhat hazardous to your health Especially the way we pagans tend to do it is that we light a candle and we let it burn all the way down. Because the worst thing that you can do is to either blow it out, which most of us don't do because it's considered an affront to the elements of fire and air, but to that and just letting it burn all the way down. But that creates a lot of soot particles in the air, and that isn't good for your lungs. And yeah, but at the same time, it does have a finality to it. So that when there's a lot of spells that are based around that, and it's very easy to work magic with the finality of a candle burning down. While with an electrical candle, it's a little bit differently. Of course, you can have it on until the batteries run out, I suppose, but that sort of becomes something different. But yeah, I think it is something that it is definitely worth having a look at. Then, of course, when we're talking about environment, we also have to look at the plastic and batteries that these electrical candles are made from. Of course, you will get quite a bit of use out of electrical candle. The battery in one lasts for quite a bit of time because all it has to do is to keep one of these light diodes going. So it will last for some time. But at the same time, we are talking plastic here, plastic and a bit of metal, and so they are also waste materials that are not too good to the environment. But I would probably agree that they are buying a couple of electrical candles will probably be better for the environment than using live candles. So yeah, but on the other hand, how much of a difference it makes, I don't know. For example, at least if you live up here in Norway, where you have to use quite a bit of resources just to keep your house warm enough to live in during the winter, I'm not sure that whatever or not inhabitants of that house use some candle work is going to pay that much of a difference. At the end of the day, I think it has very much to do with how much is having actual live candles, how much is it worth to you, and basically, what does your own morality say? It's the same as when I was discussing the idea of getting gemstones from companies where you don't have the entire list about where has this stone come from. Because then you don't know what practices has been used when digging it out, if those are environmentally friendly, and how the workers have been treated. You don't know that. And then it's really up to the individual, whatever or not you will buy stones, that you don't basically have the documentation for how it has come from the earth to your hands. But of course, stones that comes with that kind of documentation gets pretty expensive. And for a lot of people, if you want to practice anything with stones, it isn't feasible to get a collection of stones where you have that kind of documentation. And for a lot of stones, even getting that kind of documentation is hard. You can get the documentation that this is from that country, but getting all of it can be pretty tricky. So, I mean, for me, it has fallen to the basically saying that when I can afford it, I get stones with as good documentation as I can, and go for as environmentally friendly and worker friendly ways to get them as possible. But if I can't afford that, I do still choose to practice stone magic. And I think that for me, it will fall into the same category when it comes to candlelight. That candle magic is a pretty big part of my practice. And while I do think it's possible to do candle magic with an electrical candle, it doesn't do the same for me. So I will probably continue to practice candle magic. Though of course I will look into if there are some parts of my practice where electrical candles can do the same job. And then of course you have one more thing I should mention about electrical candles that can be hard to do with them is, for example, you want to inscribe them. Now, of course, one way to do it is that most, for example, electrical candles, they have a plastic surface. You can get a pen that can be wiped off. You have several options there, and then just write whatever symbols that you are needing, and then wiping that off. Or of course, you can get cheap ones for one-time use, but then again, you can create more lettering. So I think that if you're going to change to using electrical candle for an environmental purposes, then going for the good quality ones that you have for a long time is the sounder option. And then there are ways to mark the candle, and you should also be able to anoint it with oil. Just be sure that you don't get any oil inside any cracks that it can get into the electronics. And then you can just wipe it off when you are done. This you should be able to do. But of course you can't inscribe things into the wax. Now of course, I don't believe in fanaticism, so that I think that even if you decide that, okay, I will use a little bit less of live candles and get some electrical candles that I use where I can, that doesn't mean that you can never use a live candle when you need to, when you are doing something special. So that is also something to consider, that for those times that you really need to carve something into wax, you can use a real candle and then go for something that is more environmentally friendly for your daily meditations, for example, if that works for you. Also, I think that the candles tested in the article, or this research that the article was talking about, and of course, always when you hear somebody talking about research, me included, when all I have about that research is a news article about it, treat it as something interesting to look into, and not as raw hard fact, because if you want raw hard fact, you need that research paper in front of you. But anyway, my point is, I think that it was your average over-the-counter drugstore brand candles that I was testing, not something like beeswax candles and so on and so forth, though beeswax would also give off soot particles, and I think that is what the main issue was, that it gives up quite a bit of soot, and that the homes of people that use a lot of candles have quite a bit of soot in them. So yeah, that is my thoughts on the issue. Basically, I am not going to drastically change my practice, but since I had already considered getting some electrical candles for some of my work, I might speed up the process and look into a good brand and get a couple of them to try out. And it's something I would be interested in reading further about, because where I can save damage to the environment without having any really big issue with it myself, I would definitely do that. But I think it's really up to the individual. For me, I will be looking further into it, but I'm not going to change anything drastically right now. So yeah, I hope you have a great day, and blessed be.